welcome. This is Dr. Paul Dyer. Welcome to Bridges Live. I like to thank all my sponsors and all the people that come onto my show and download the shows. And you can always reach me at drpaulholisticscience.com. You know, as most of the people know, that when you listen to Bridges Live, it's about bringing the information to the world. But it's not just information. It's about information, understanding, and action. You know, so many people think they know and never fully understand. And then I think when people fully understand something, then they can bring their life into a full action. And it doesn't matter what it is. So as you guys know on Bridges Live, I like to have my guests come on and introduce themselves, because I don't do well introductions except, you know, being friends and connections. That's different than introductions. So Russ, welcome to Bridges Live. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. Thanks for having me. I appreciate coming on.
So give everybody a little snippet about what Russ does and
Sure.
who you are, and go from there.
Absolutely, yeah. My name is Russ Williams. I am a transition coach that empowers and inspires individuals in their transitional journey. We'll talk about that. I'm also a motivational speaker. I am an author of the book Transition Game Plan, Simple Steps to Achieving Personal Success, in which I share my experiences and insight on how to develop a game plan for many of life's difficult transitions. Very similar to you, one thing we have in common, Dr. Paul, is I am also a Hall of Fame inductee, not in martial arts like yourself, but I am a Hall of Fame inductee in basketball at Mount Stephen McClancy High School in Queens, New York, and also a Hall of Fame inductee for basketball at Manhattan College in Riverdale, New York.
Oh man. You're back at home, as we talked before, you know, being from New York. Hey, all you people from the West Coast, Midwest, you guys got nothing on East Coast basketball, and I know and I'm a Knicks fan, and I'm sorry Knicks have been decimated for over 2.5 decades. So yeah. I get it. Stop spitting in my face under my Knicks, but I get it. Keep going, Russ.
No problem. We'll talk Knicks as well, because I am too a diehard fan too, and I got a chance to work with the Knicks. I'll share with you as well. I'm also a future podcaster like yourself, Dr. Paul. I hope to be successful like you. I hope to have you on. So I just want everybody to watch out for the podcast, the future podcast that we're going to have. I am a father of 2 beautiful daughters, ages 18 and 15. I've been in the world of sales. I was a sales rep for a company called Johnston's, which was the leader of Scholastic Products for 15 years, retired from there. After that, I did a couple of things. I was a background actor as well. I did some acting. You could have saw me prominently in, what's that movie, Django Unchained. I got a role, not a role, but I had a prominent feature. My face was featured in that movie, along with other movies that I did and TV shows that I did in the New Orleans area. And besides all that, Dr. Paul, I have nothing else going on.
Well, you know, Russ, thank God for you. And most people think, and again, I'd like to thank all my listeners and downloads for people who are coming on to Bridges Live. Russ, most people understand that, boy, when Dr. Paul has someone on, there's a connection that he has made, or he's bringing some information to the world that hopefully just maybe I can get an action out of it. You know, when you talk about transitions, and we've had other coaches on and on Bridges Live, and I think a lot of us sing the same tune. But have you ever gone as a writer, and what you've done, gone to Barnes & Noble and looked in front of the books that says, change your life, all that whole bookshelf about health, change your life, be who you are, all those books, and it's astounding how many books are being written, and yet we are living in a fucked up time.
Yeah, absolutely, we are.
You're so is anyone reading anything ever? So many people will on our social medias and stuff, they'll post these memes of, it's important to find yourself and be happy with who you are. And I'm not sure if people are trying to fake it until they make it. And I always thought that was such a horrible, horrific term to use for people, because we should stop faking what we are and start developing what we can be.
Absolutely. Now, I definitely agree with you, Dr. Paul. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like myself with the transition component, yeah, I did. I looked in those shelves at Barnes and Nobles, and my main thing was about transitioning. And I didn't see anything on the shelves about transitioning.
Right.
It was all self-help books and everything about that. But, you know, with me, what I do is, you know, we are all in transition, everything that we do, you know, from sports to life to everything. So I just wanted to find my niche. And like you said, I'm glad you brought that up about, you know, going to find these self-help books, because when I did that at Barnes & Noble, I didn't see anything. So I was like, you know what? I have an experience on transition. I can write about it, and it's something we all go through. So I just want to carve my niche in that transition lane.
You know, first, people, I know people are listening to podcasts, and your picture will be up on the pod. People know a picture will be up. But even if they go to Russ Williams, you're a young black male. And I have to tell you, when I write now for many things, I used to write collectively for people, but I also found that for black males or black men or black people, we don't read about ourselves. So we don't see ourselves in transitions or in successful avenues, even though there are the other people out there that we like, man, Denzel Washington, what a great speech at that college, or Will Smith, he's so inspirational. But Will Smith is not writing a book, and a lot of blacks don't read. So how are we going to get to those people to help them know that they too can transition and be great?
Yeah. Well, the great thing about, I mean, like you mentioned, a lot of people don't read. So the great invention that's been involved has been audiobooks. So I think that's been a big draw for people. But again, like you're doing, Dr. Paul, podcasting is great as well. I think podcasting is great because, you know, that sphere of podcasting, you know, goes all through the world, and you know, it's more convenient, you know, because again, we are lazy, you know, intellectually sometimes we don't like to read, but I think people can like to listen, and like, you know, their daily days, their daily, you know, routines, they can listen to, you know, Dr. Paul, and they can listen about, you know, what's going on. They can listen about transitions as well. So I think maybe that component of podcasting, you know, might take the place of us reading, unfortunately. But hey, they have audiobooks as well.
Well, with some of the things that you found in transition, Russ, and again, thank you. When some people transition, what are some of the things that people just miss that one beginning step?
Yeah, I think the one beginning step, and with me, with my, you know, dealing with transitions and being a transition coach, that one beginning step is they don't develop a transition game plan. There is no game plan. There is no point of attack. There is no plan, you know, to get them on the transitional track and what they're trying to accomplish.
God, it sounds like my Knicks. You sound like you're talking about my Knicks. They have no transitional game whatsoever.
There you go. Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I love to talk to Knicks about you as well. I mean, with you as well, because I'm too like a diehard Knicks fan. I've been with the days of Ken the Animal Bannister, Eddie Lee Wilkins, Gerald Wilkins. So I've gone back during that time. So yeah, there is no game plan, it seems like, for the Knicks. There is no game plan for the Knicks. We don't know, you know, they don't have an identity.
No.
You know, in terms of the Knicks. They don't have an identity. They don't have that transition game plan for them to transition, you know, to higher heights. They don't have that game plan. And that's the first thing that has to be involved with the transition, is developing that transition game plan.
You know, when we talk to young kids and you mention transition, like I did with my children, and I am a father of 9 children, 7 girls and 2 boys. Yeah, and now I have 6 grandchildren and 1 more on the way due coming up this April. And again,
congratulations.
Thank you. But again, we are always in transition. You hit that right on the head with a hammer. We're always in a transition from this to that with each communication and with each relationship. And relationship has nothing to do with just with a person. It has more to do with relationship with yourself and your life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's most definitely, you absolutely hit that on the nose, Dr. Paul. We're in a relationship with ourselves. We're in a relationship with other people as well. And the key terms in terms of transition, like you mentioned, is from and to. We're always going from something to something, via relationships, via careers, via moving from place to place. We're always in transition, and that the words from and to are the two important components in transitions.
Do you have, like, so, you know, we get to certain points in our lives through a testimonial, and my testimonial from working with emotional science and working with just the things I've worked with and studying the things I've studied, I realized until I understood who I was, it was not going to save my life, because my life was, I almost took my life because I did not feel what I was. And until I not fixed it, healed that, and constant practice, it was always going to be an issue. What was your testimony to how you got to your transition?
How I got to my transition and how I got started in I guess I like to say in the business of transition. When I lived in New Orleans, I was a behavior specialist at a charter school.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I got laid off. And during that time, I always wanted to write a book. I always was involved, I was always intrigued about what can I write about. And that word transition, because I had an actual transition file. When I transitioned from New York to New Orleans, I had an actual file that I labeled transition, what I was doing to and from. So, but when I was laid off, that gave me God gave me the idea. I'm just going to give all the credit to God. God gave me the idea to write about transition, because I too was going through a transition from being unemployed, from being employed to unemployed. So that was the turning point for me when I was laid off. I was going through a transition. Hey, look, I consider myself the transition king. So let me write about it, and let me get involved in helping people evolve. Get a when they have a transition. My deal is helping people with their transition by developing a game plan. So that me being laid off, that was the turning point for me to get involved in the business of transition.
It's funny how it's not funny, because it's a term I know I have to stop using. I really do, because it's something about when we get to a point in our lives and knowing that who do I want to be, what am I, and where do I want to go? And that goes from and to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. From and to. Big words. Two big words in the word transition. From and to. Because we're always changing. We're always evolving. We're always going from something to something. Like me personally, I'm in the midst. I got a divorce recently. I was married for 15 years. So now it's how do I transition from being married to being divorced?
Right.
So again, we're always in constant transition. From and to are the two major words that's in transition, and that's for transition. And it's funny that you mentioned those two words there, Dr. Paul, is because I mentioned that in my book, Transition Game Plan. In my book here, you're going to be seeing the words from and to constantly when we're talking about transition. So I'm glad you brought that up there, Dr. Paul. I appreciate that.
So, Dr. John, we want to talk about Dr. John out of New Orleans, a jazz musician, right?
Right.
So tell us about, because most of us know about the Marsalises, the family down there. It seems like they're the only people that grew up out of New Orleans, and there's more people, Mm-hmm. So tell us about Dr. John.
Yeah, Dr. John, he had one hit, I think it was Right Here, Right Now, but Dr. John was a famed jazz musician in New Orleans. I think he just recently passed away a number of months ago, like less than a year. He was a fixture in New Orleans. He was a pianist, I believe he was. But yeah, he was a major player in New Orleans. So, when I lived in New Orleans, I had the great pleasure of living in New Orleans for 8 years. And my daughters are still there now at this day, during this time. So yeah, Dr. John was a prevalent guy and the jazz musician, in that community there in New Orleans.
When we talk about passing away, we know about Kobe just recently passed away, and then being in the martial arts world, Ip Chung just passed away, the grandson of Ip Man. But there's people are passing away every day. There are people lives are being taken from them by hatred and hostility every day. Again, when we are talking about life and death, there is that big transition right there that people are so afraid of.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, Dr. Paul. And I've talked on this subject before, and it's such a tragic event what happened to Kobe Bryant and his daughters, and those other passengers that were involved in the helicopter crash as well. Like I mention to people all the time, when you're having that transitional moment from life to death, the two things I really I like to stress, and I call them Gameplan Steps or GPSs. What I do is what I would talk about in terms of that transition is you have to always really hold evident, hold the legacy of that memory of the person who passes away, and you want to be that conduit for in your lives, what that person represented, and you can continue the legacy of that person by remembering what they did, and you can carry on the spirit of that person. Kobe Bryant he had that Mamba mentality, and that was a mindset, that was a mentality. So we can learn a lot from that, and we can take on that Mamba mentality so his legacy can live on. The second GPS, or game plan step that I like to use in terms of this transition, and GPS is short for game plan steps, is you have to allow yourself time to grieve during this, transition from life to death. I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves an opportunity to grieve, and we just go right into our everyday, what we've been doing every day. You have to give yourself that time to grieve. I take myself, for example, when my dad passed away 5 years ago, it took me some time to grieve. There's no timetable on it. Everybody handles death differently, and everybody grieves differently. So there's no timetable, but you have to allow yourself the time to grieve, the time to mourn. And also, I apply it to my divorce, because when I got divorced, I gave myself time to grieve. I treated it like it was a death. I had the the mourning portion, I had the burial portion, I had the repast portion of my divorce.
Yes.
And I think with that, when I did that, that gave me the opportunity to move on and go forward and be in a great space in which I am today. So you have to give yourself and that time allowed to grieve. And again, there's no timetable on it as well. If it takes a year, that's great. If it takes a week, for people, that's great. But you have to give yourself that time to grieve, especially when you're having that transition from life to death.
So thank you so much, Russ, and thank you, because, one of those things is that, and I teach a grief sharing class, and one of those things you said, everything you said, and I think everyone is grieving or mourning something in their life. I really believe that. And the reason why I say that so staunchly is because we don't have to grieve a loss of death. We can grieve a loss of self, loss of what we thought we could be, thought we should have been, thought we needed to be. We could grieve all those assumptions and those constructs that the systematic system puts on ourselves about you should be this type of man, this type of black man, this type of husband, this type of father, this type of person that drives this, has that, wears this. All those can be mourned and grieved because that is not who you are. That is not what you were developed to be in God's grace. You were here to serve. And I don't want to, sometimes I get in my head and I get so preachy, but you said it so perfectly about mourning and grieving. It takes time. Give yourself that time to transition from to. There is nothing in between. Let yourself do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to let yourself do that. Got to let yourself, allow yourself to heal. You know, right now we're in the healing process with this whole, you know, with the Kobe Bryant, horrific events, that accident that took place. But you have to give yourself that time to grieve, and that grieving will allow you to heal. And that's the most important aspect for anybody.
What is some of the other, after they get a person says, I too need to learn how to transition. Mm-hmm. Besides, we're going to get into how they contact you. What is the next step that someone could do right now?
Well, again, is the first thing off the bat is also to identify, you know, that transition with the game plan. That's the first step. You have to identify. You have to go into it with a game plan. I look at it like this, Dr. Paul. All the, you know, in sports, I reference sports a lot because I played college basketball. You know, I'm a fan of sports, but I just look at it as every coach has a game plan. Mm-hmm. You know, you have a game plan before you go out there. You know, Bill Belichick is a great coach. You know, he has a game plan drawn up on the board before the players go out there and play. You know, you have to have that. With that, within that game plan, with any transition that you're going through, within that game plan, you have to have game plan steps, and like I call them, and I coined the phrase GPSs. You have to have game plan steps. That's going to lead you to a successful transition. You know, that's so important. And then finally, the last thing, when you're going through all those steps, the last thing is to execute that game plan. You know, it doesn't mean anything if you have a game plan. You got to execute it. You got to make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. You go through all your game plan steps. That's going to lead you to a successful transition. And then again, you have to execute. You have to execute in the play. You have to execute.
One of those things that I don't know if I want to hurt the GPS, but when you said Belichick, you know, the one thing that people say and I agree, and I'm being a Giant fan, I can't stand nothing that comes out of New England or Boston being a Yankee fan. So trust me, when I'm choking a chicken here, I'm like, I love Belichick because this man's amazing. And I'm a New Yorker, so to say that means a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due. You know, he's the ultimate guy. I'm sure he game plans, he schemes for the games and everything. You know, he's the master of it. He's going to take you out of what you like doing. And again, all that's developed because he has a game plan. He game plans for teams. He game plans for players. You know, he game plans, and what does he do at the end? They execute. The players execute the game plan.
One of the things he also does, and this is where I was going to go, is that he makes adjustments. Even though you have a game plan in your marriage, in who you are, if you cannot put things in concrete stone, and you just got to be able to make adjustments, and then that goes back into the plan and execution. So, yeah, learn how to make those adjustments, people, and you also could be transitioned. So many people stay on the same track of being stupid, and you're like, they're stuck on stupid, right? They're like, don't you think you should change the way you're doing? They're like, but I know it works for Mickey Mouse. Damn, man, you ain't Mickey Mouse.
That's right. That's right. That's true. It may work for somebody, but it might not work for you. Absolutely. Yeah, you gotta be able to adjust on the fly. And like you said, Bill Belichick, he's the master of that. He's able to make the adjustments, in-game adjustments. That's what he's the master at. You know, guys like him, in-game adjustments.
So, how can people get a hold of you? Where do they need to reach you to help? And also find your books. So you can probably find your book on your website. But how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, I can be reached on Twitter. Twitter at rwilltransition. That's one word. R-Will. I spell that RWILLTRANSITION. Also, I can be reached on Instagram at rwilltransitions with an S. If people, I love to reach out to people on Facebook. Just reach out to me at Russ Williams. And also, when you do that, you get a chance to see my show, Transition Tuesday, seen live on Facebook Live. So, you know, reach out to me there. Also, I'm available for bookings for, just email me for bookings. I do individual transition coaching sessions, also do speaking engagements, and I could be reached at Russ Williams, RWT. So again, that's Russ Williams, RWT at gmail.com. You can reach out to me. I would love to hear from everybody. And also, when you email me, ladies and gentlemen out there, of the Bridges Live with Dr. Paul Experience, just let me know that you heard me on the show, and I love to reach out to everybody in the masses. And also, one last thing too, Dr. Paul, if people are interested in getting my book, Transition Game Plan, they can just email me. I can get the information out to them, and I can get an autographed, signed copy to them ASAP.
Now, when you go to the Instagram, let's do that Instagram again. It is R.
Sure. It is so the letter R, I'll spell it RWILLTRANSITIONS. So that's R Will Transitions on Instagram.
Excellent. So I'm not letting you go yet because we still got to talk Knicks, and I'm a sports and I'm a sports fan too because I've worked with professional athletes and combine kids because the kinesiology and muscle movement is a freak thing in my head. I love doing it, and the same thing happens when kids. I ask them, if this is not going to work out, what is your next? And that, to me, goes back to your GPS. What is your planned steps? What is your next step? Because you're going to put everything you got into a basket. What is your next transition to your next step? And that's why so many athletes take their lives. And we're not even talking about the CTE issue on the football, but so many athletes get into drug, alcohol, abusive tendencies because they, too, don't know how to transition.
Yeah, that's true, and a lot of times I love the opportunity to talk. Well, I have an opportunity to talk to former basketball athletes. Like, for example, when I was doing I was doing rings for the National Basketball Retired Players Association, and they had people coming in, and they were talking about the transition from being a NBA player to now transitioning to doing something else. And again, a lot of times I was finding, like, number one, they didn't have a transition game plan. They had no idea what they were going to do. They were kind of lost in the process because, again, you have to have that transition. You have to make that transition. You have to make it really quickly, especially when you're an athlete who's going to transition to doing something else. So I found that in my dealings with the people, I found that they didn't have a transition game plan. So I was able to help them, get them on track with that. And again, talk about our GPS is the game plan steps, what's going to lead you to that successful transition. So I was able to help them with that. And again, ideally, we talk about it all the time, is it's going to be up to them to execute that game plan that I developed for you. So, we had some great success in that. And it's funny, Dr. Paul, you mentioned the Knicks. I also had a transition period with the Knicks. I'm not sure did you ever go to any games with the Knicks? Did you ever get a chance to go to games?
Season ticket holder still.
Okay, all right. So you might have been in the house in which I did. I had the great fortune of doing a Legends ring with the Knicks, in which what we did was, and we did it at halftime, we had Legends rings made for the legends of the Knicks, from Walt Frazier, Bernard King. We had John Starks, and we delivered those rings. So I was responsible for doing those Legends rings. So I remember at halftime, I think it was who was the first class that went in. I think it was Bernard King. I think it was who did I mention? Clyde Frazier.
I was not there. I know that, but
oh yeah. So I did that. So I had a great transitional moment in terms of my career when I was in sales. I was able to do the rings for my beloved Knicks. Our beloved Knicks, a Legends ring. They stopped the process, but I did like over 15, 20 rings that I worked with the Knicks. And also I had the opportunity to do that with the New York Liberty as well. They had a Legends ring and they brought those legends back to receive their legends ring. So that was a pretty good thing. But
that's beautiful.
Our Knicks, though.
Yeah. So I got two questions. What position did you play?
What position did I play?
Yeah.
I played, I came in high school. I'm 6'4". I came in high school. I was a point guard, but I finished up as a shooting guard.
Okay.
Yep.
So what do you think about the game and how it's changed in what he called these stretch positions? And I believe these stretch positions came in because people could not, back in the day, and I'm thinking Rucker Park days.
Absolutely.
Back in the day, you knew exactly what you were, what you could do, and how you're going to do it, and no one's either going to stop you or they were going to have to do something. Now they have these stretch positions because people could not perfect a position.
Right. Yeah. That's true. As we transition into the 2000s, the three has revolutionized the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed the game. It's changed the game, how we play the game. There's no more like pivot play anymore, post play anymore.
Right.
Everything is spread out. Everything is more, more freedom to do that. I mean, Steph Curry has revolutionized the game, I think, from shooting the three from long distances. And again, it gives you more athleticism, more freedom. There's less stress banging in the post.
Right.
A lot of times people say, like, I know the Houston Rockets, they deal with analytics. And they talk about how a contested post-up move, the percentages you are making it are so much less than you taking a three. So they do without that. They don't even have post-up moves.
No.
They don't do that. Yeah, they don't do that because of the analytics. So that has changed the game, and, stretch threes and, athletic fours and fives, there's no more center. There's no more centers. And, but the three has revolutionized the game. It's changed the game. Some would say for the worse, but, I guess the game is always transitioning. The game is always moving. Yeah, it's always moving. But I guess people are dealing the analytics. The analytics show that a contested post-up move is the percentages are less than it is for an actual three-pointer. So that's how people play nowadays, and it's and again, I get this question a lot, Dr. Paul. Like, I get this question from people saying hey, look, if those players of the day, those great post players of today, of the past, Hakeem Olajuwon, things like that, would they be able to adjust?
Yes.
In this period now?
Yes.
And I say yes. They'll be able to transition.
Absolutely.
Because they'll be able to adapt, like we talked about, how you talked about with Belichick, how he's able to adapt. Those players will be able to adapt. Next thing you know, instead of being in the post, they'll be mixing up their game in the post and shooting threes as well, because they'll be trained to do that.
But the other thing is that I believe they were smart enough, athletic enough to be able to curtail their game to what they needed to be in the game. That's what athletes do. That's why a good athlete is not someone who's just faster, stronger, jump higher, but the one that is smart enough to have the ability to adjust. And that's what we're talking about here. Thanks, everyone, for listening to Bridges Live. We're talking with Russ Williams, transitional coach. And we're gonna have everything on there is going to be on the podcast. Make sure you click on the link below in the podcast to understand how to get in contact with Russ, because it is the GPS, it is the Gameplan Steps. It is understanding that in your life, you're going through a transition all the time. Thank you, Russ.
Absolutely. No problem. And again, people have to understand you have to have that transition game plan. And that's what I help out, and that's what I assist people in doing as a transition coach. You have to have that transition game plan for any transition. Again, big or small, any transition is important. Every transition matters, and that's the key thing I try to convey to everybody. Everybody goes through transitions, and your transition matters to you, and it matters to us as well.
Thank you, Russ.